In 1775, Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet stating that the freedoms of men can only be maintained by limiting the power of government. The pamphlet was called Common Sense, and today it still is common sense.
I'm April Giarrusso.
I'm Mark Zaccaria. This is Common Sense. Welcome back. This week marks the start of our second year of production. We've defied the odds by lasting this long, and you are part of the reason we did. Thanks for watching. We look forward to measuring up to your expectations as our second year in business unfolds. Now to some of the other reasons we've made it this far. This week, State Representative Patricia Morgan conducts an in-depth interview with Matthew Olson of the Independent Contractors Association of Rhode Island. Together, they will dig into the details of what damage trucks actually do to roads and bridges and how much they already are paying. During the breaks in that four-segment dialogue, April and I will pop back in to ask the satiric question, "Are you kidding me?" As always, our broadcast will conclude with lighthearted but incisive commentary from Portsmouth's pundit, Jeff Richard. To get us started, though, we will take an analytical review of some of the top news stories affecting Rhode Islanders this week. April?
Thanks, Mark. Let's start by digging into some of the statistics that describe the Ocean State today. Last week, the Hassenfeld Institute for Public Leadership released its quarterly survey on key issues facing our state. Bear in mind, this poll was conducted by Fleming & Associates, a center-left public relations agency here in Providence. Taken as it was at the close of 2015, it should be no surprise that the governor's plan to toll trucks to pay for the big bond topped the list of concerns expressed by Rhode Islanders. According to the survey, 43.9% of respondents approve or strongly approve of the governor's plan for $1 billion plus 30-year bond to be paid back by tolls on large trucks. Wait, what? Okay, that still left 49.4% opposed or strongly opposed, nearly a dead heat given the 4.9% margin of error. When the question was modified, however, to query on the speaker's plan for a pay-as-you-go approach with tolls as an augmenting feature, the results were clear. 51.9% opposed, while those approving were down in the 30s. For each question, though, the number strongly opposed was more than double that of those strongly in favor. On public school performance, there was a laundry list of possible ways to improve education. They included make it easier to deal with underperforming teachers, give principals more authority, expand school choice, lengthen the school day, and redirect the school aid formula to areas of greatest student need. Only the last option costs anyone any new money, by the way. The results? 19.7% of respondents went for redirecting money, while 71.8% were split almost evenly among the no-cost options. Finally, on the standard right direction, wrong track question, only 35.4% of Rhode Islanders thought their state was doing just fine. 43.9% asserted we are on the wrong track. That's just a slight shift towards the wrong track from the previous quarterly results. It makes me wonder what the remaining 20.7% of Rhode Islanders are thinking. The Hassenfeld Center results do clearly show, however, that these are not the good old days. Mark?
Thanks for those numbers, April. Here's an interesting story about the collision of idealism and pragmatism that caught my eye this week. Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse is frequently said to be the most environmentally concerned member of that chamber. We've seen numerous photos of him over the years on the floor of the Senate lecturing the few of his colleagues who are present about the evils of the human hand as it relates to the health and well-being of the planet. Recently, Senator Whitehouse showed up at the Burrillville site of Invenergy's Clear River Energy Center. That's a gas-fired power plant project. The proposed 900-megawatt generator is under construction. It promises to power most of the northern part of Rhode Island as well as much of Worcester County, Massachusetts. Its site takes advantage of an unusual confluence of two high-pressure natural gas pipelines and may be the only spot in New England where such a facility could be located. The Invenergy construction site has also become home away from home for a core of environmental activists who are protesting the industrial use of even the cleanest, most plentiful, and most efficient of fossil fuels. So, naturally, when I saw that the senator was scheduled to be there, I assumed he'd be manning the barricades with the rest of the Green team. Imagine my surprise when I saw his on-site interview with Ted Nesi of Channel 12. It features the senator singing the praises of the economic development, jobs, and energy self-sufficiency associated with the project. That must have caught Ted by surprise too, because he asked White House directly if there'd been any blowback from environmental activists over his failure to oppose this plant. The senator stammered something awkward about no problems with Save the Bay, the League of Conservation Voters, and some nameless others in the movement. Well, that satisfied Ted, but it got Steve Alquist of the RI Future website on the phone to follow up. All he found was that Save the Bay doesn't concern itself with anything that far from the water. The League of Conservation Voters has no chapter in Little Rhodey, so they can only deal with national issues here. And the others remained nameless. Steve Alquist even noted on his blog that protesters had been arrested at Senator Whitehouse office when their demonstration on all this got a little out of hand. Steve was perplexed. I was bemused. For all his dogmatic speech about 0.5 degrees of global warming, when it mattered, the senator followed the money. So, you are a politician, sir. Okay, now I understand. April?
Thanks, Mark. Last week, we reported on Governor Gina Raimondo's aborted trip to the annual International Economic Summit at Davos, Switzerland. As a side note in that report, we mentioned that she and her staff were to receive travel expenses for the junket from the URI Foundation. This footnote to the Davos trip has now become the 800-pound gorilla in the room down at the university, however. As Lynn Arditi reported in the Providence Journal, since the dust-up over the governor's travel plans, URI Foundation's board chairman, Lauren A. Adrian, has been dancing on hot coals as his biggest donors have demanded to know what gives. It seems a number of six-figure benefactors are offended that their educational and scholarship charity has become a slush fund for politicians looking to make expenditures off of the books. According to Projo, Adrian acknowledged that he'd received a wide range of pushback, a handful of resignations from the board, and by his estimation, some $1.5 million of prospective donations suddenly in jeopardy. When last we checked, the URI Foundation's board chairman was frantically putting out fires and probably making a mental note not to facilitate any more creative financing if the governor calls again. Now, do you remember the story about Rhode Island's new Chief Innovation Officer, Richard Kulata? His salary, benefits, office staff expenses, and even office space were all picked up by the Rhode Island College Foundation. That tab looks like it could be close to $500,000 per year. Seems like URI got off easy with only a one-time exposure of $10,000. But what about the House of Representatives? Aren't they supposed to have the power of the purse as the check and balance to the executive branch? Well, then there's the Senate and their quaint custom of advice and consent before senior positions can be filled. Better yet, what about the taxpayers of the Ocean State? How can we expect transparency in government when covert funding can be arranged for something as important as a cabinet position with just a few well-placed phone calls? The governor rode into office on the strength of her skills as a financial operator. Now that she's operating on us, do we all still think that that was the best choice of credentials for a chief executive? Mark?
Thanks again, April. Before we get to the first segment of Representative Patricia Morgan's interview, let's take a short break. It feels like the perfect time for someone to ask the question, are you kidding me?
In a completely unrelated topic to my previous Are You Kidding Me segment, regarding wasteful spending by the government, Rhode Island now has the second widest pay gap in the nation between public employees and their private sector counterparts. Are you kidding me? There's been a 68% increase in the pay gap between Rhode Island's government workers and their private, for-profit counterparts, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. The Bureau compared median earnings for full-time, year-round workers between 2010 and 2014 against the previous 5-year period. It found that the private sector earning declined greater in Rhode Island than in any other state, but the local government workers saw an increase of 10%, which is actually the largest percentage gain nationwide. That makes the pay gap in Rhody nearly triple the 16.5% found nationally. Statistics are all well and good, but what does that really mean? What's causing the inequality? Robert Fellner of the Providence Journal found that mandatory collective bargaining laws are the real culprit. These laws force public agencies to contract with government unions, meaning the government unions have all the leverage in negotiations with their ultimate employers. And in case you're not putting 2 and 2 together, their employers are the taxpayers and general public. Like you and me. We have no leverage in negotiating the pay for our own state's employees. But don't worry. We won't have to think about these employees having such a wide pay gap for too much longer, because eventually those employees will retire. And then we'll have to worry about their retirement plans that cost 8 times more than what private employers pay. Are you kidding me?
On January 16, 2016, Representative Bob Lancey of Cranston introduced a bill to declare 2016 the Year of the Veteran, as well as a bill to eliminate state income taxes on military pensions. Here are some clips from that event at the State House.
It is my intention, hopefully, to be able to declare 2016 Year of the Veteran, and I will be introducing a resolution on the floor today to do just put in a bill for no tax on military pensions.
Along with Representative Lancey, I have the honor and the privilege of introducing legislation to eliminate the income tax on military pensions, which is extremely important, not only for everyone in this room today, but for the economy of our state.
Rhode Island is the last state in New England with absolutely no veterans benefits.
Welcome to Common Sense Rhode Island. This is the program where we try to make sense of the policies that affect your life and come up with common sense solutions. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and I have with me today Matthew Olson,
correct,
who is the president of the Independent Contractors Association here in Rhode Island. Welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Mr. Olson, we're here actually to talk. We're here to talk about the governor's toll proposal. It's something that right now is consuming a lot of the conversation in the General Assembly. The governor is proposing to raise a lot of money to fix our bridges and our roads. We all agree that that needs to be done.
Oh, yes.
But it's the method that she intends to use that is kind of troubling. No, not just kind of troubling. It's very troubling. It's very troubling because it's not reallocating money within our current existing funds. It's going out there and grabbing a whole lot of new funds. And I know that your organization is very concerned about it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Rhode Island contractors, independent contractors?
What we are is we're all mom and pop businesses basically. We're excavating contractors, where some of us have trucks that haul for people, we're landscapers, there's septic system people, asphalt pavers. We're all the small people that come and work usually for homeowners in your backyards is basically what we are. We all have trucks and equipment, and those trucks are tools in our box to come do a project or a service for you.
Sure, okay, so most of your members service people right here in Rhode Island.
Yep.
A lot of construction work.
Correct.
Local work, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Do you have folks though that also are long haulers?
We have a few people we have a couple of members that go to New Hampshire and back and haul bark mulch or things like that back to us. They could travel in and out of the state, but most of us stay within the state.
Okay. So, and you own your own trucks?
Correct.
Most people have 1, 2, 5, or 10 trucks?
Some up to 10. Some members have trucks up to some members. Like myself, I have 1 10-wheeler and 1 small dump truck. That's all I choose to have. Okay.
All right. So the governor's proposal is to toll only 18-wheelers. Why do you think that this affects you?
Well, now let's stop and look at it. What's happening is it's on the amount of axles that are going over the bridge. So there's going to be some kind of a sensor on that toll. It's not going to pick up weight, it's going to pick up the amount of axles that are going over. So when I go over that bridge towing my 3-axle trailer, moving my excavator, bingo, I get a toll on that now. So that's going to happen on a regular basis. Or if that 18-wheeler goes over the trailer or it's a trailer dump, they're going to get nailed for that toll on that day.
All right. And so you're, okay. I get that. I also get the fact that I personally, having looked at, I think it's a sister organization to you, the Owner Operator Independent Drivers Association.
Yes.
OOIDA.
Yes.
All right, and I've had some, they actually put out a poll that they did, and they're folks kind of like you. They're a guy who might own 1 truck or 2 trucks, and he picks up something here, delivers it there, picks up something there, brings it back, kind of person. Just not a big concern, but just a onesie or a twosie. And they did a survey of all their members who actually operate here in New England. And the poll said that 76% of them, I think it was, would just not even bother coming to Rhode Island.
Well, that's what I'm afraid is going to happen. Now, also, too, remember that it's not just the 18-wheeler. If you have a smaller truck that's towing, say, a landscape trailer, the minute you hit the 4-axle mark, if it's going on axles, even that small truck will be told at that point when he crosses the bridge. So it's not on weight, it's on the amount of axles.
On the amount of axles in that
So
particular
a pickup truck
vehicle.
towing a 2-axle trailer is now 4 axles and will be told on the bridge. Because
Okay.
there's no way that I know of that they can distinguish between weights. It's going on, that sensor goes on axles, it's counting them.
Well, and I can tell you, I've actually requested information from DOT. It's really hard to get from
Yes.
them.
They're not
But-
going to tell you anything.
But when they did their truck count, they were doing a traffic count to see how many trucks actually passed through Rhode Island and how much money they could grab from them. And they did it only for one day. And even then they said that they thought anything that happened at night was kind of extrapolated because their sensors aren't accurate at night, for lack of a better word, so they have no idea. I think they may even start tolling cars, to be honest with you, because it's really difficult for them to distinguish, these sensors to distinguish whether it's a pickup truck hauling a trailer or an 18-wheeler, right? A huge truck. So I think there's a lot of difficulties with that, but I guess my biggest concern is, and I hadn't actually thought of what you said, that as a package, you do have 18 wheels going through these towing places.
On a smaller vehicle. Now, let's also talk about one thing, and I want to dispel this myth because Rhode Island truck owners never says anything. Let's talk about the real causes of why these roads are falling apart. They're blaming us, the truck drivers, for it. In the legislation, and I'd like to dispel this because it never ever happens. In the legislation, it says one truck, the federal government says that one big truck is equal to 9,600 cars, okay? That's not true.
No.
What it is that the way the roads have been built over the years, the materials used in the road and the overuse of road salt. Road salt is corrosive to the bridges. That does more damage than any truck driving over that bridge could ever possibly do. You drive down the road, you see the sides of the bridge where everything, the concrete is crumbling.
Scaling off.
That's not the truck doing that. That's the overuse of road salt. They have to find a way to de-ice these bridges on a different level. If we're going to spend this kind of money, and now we're going to go right back, within 10 years, these bridges are going to be falling apart because we're not changing.
Okay,
how we're doing it.
going to talk a little bit about that in the next segment. I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about truck counts. Because you mentioned that as a package you can have 18 wheels. I think we're not going to have enough 18-wheelers passing through Rhode Island if this goes through. And then where do they go? I just read an article about the federal government questioning whether Rhode Island's proposal is even legal, right? You cannot treat one kind of truck different from another kind of truck.
It's called discrimination?
It's kind of discrimination, yeah, but on a truck level, where if, and it may, our law, if it passes, will run afoul of those federal regulations. So then, they've already borrowed the money, they've already committed all of these funds, so now it goes to all commercial vehicles?
Well, that's what I think the goal is going to be.
Seriously, because you can't treat different classes of trucks differently. And if the big 18-wheelers don't come,
I've already
your
talked to
pickup
several
trucks and your vans and your dump trucks, they're on the chopping block.
I've already talked to several trucking companies that I know, friendly, and they don't have to come to Rhode Island, and they're not going to now. A lot of times they come to Rhode Island because their base is here, but they let the drivers come home. They're not. They're going to leave their trucks in Mass and make the drivers come back here. They're not going to pay the tolls if they don't have to.
Yeah, no, they won't. And you even saw that UPS actually moved some of their trucks. They're all over the United States. They don't have to be in here in Rhode Island. They'd like to be here.
I know.
But not if we told them. Anyway, we're going to take a break right now, and we're going to come back and talk about that damage estimate. And in the meantime, we're going to say, are you kidding me?
Okay.
In the classic 1939 movie, The Wizard of Oz, all the Cowardly Lion needs to regain his courage is a medal. All the Scarecrow needs is a diploma, and all the Tin Man lacks is a heart. Now the Rhode Island Senate seems to think that all our state needs to trigger prosperity is an unpaid economic ambassador. Are you kidding me? It's true. Senators Crowley, Jabbour, Sosnowski, Picard, and Pearson introduced a bill, Senate 2015, to create this new position. If the bill becomes law, the gubernatorial appointment would confer no salary, no travel expenses, and no staff support, thank goodness. The job description says the economic ambassador shall encourage business activities and promote investment in Rhode Island from around the nation and around the world. How can that be done when what our teeny little state actually offers is the highest taxes, the most onerous business regulations, the most inbred self-serving crony political system, and some very nice beaches? In fact, the bill spends far more time describing the certificate the Secretary of State will prepare, under seal, for the honoree than it does describing the value argument he or she will make on behalf of our little patch of paradise. Shouldn't this bill be considered only after passage of real measures to reduce the size and cost of government, gut the regulatory malaise that chokes startups, and speed up the delivery of state services to its customers, those very businesses that we're trying to lure? Like that'll happen. Instead, I guess, if this one becomes law, the governor will just have to be on the lookout for an appointee capable of clicking his or her heels together 3 times and bringing us all back to Easy Street. Do we pay these senators to come up with stuff like this? Are you kidding me?
Welcome back to Common Sense Rhode Island. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and we have with us this morning Matthew Olson, who is the president of the Independent Contractors Association, which is a group of mostly local truck drivers who come to our houses and do work for us in the construction trade and in other trades. In our last segment, your phone rang, and you have now turned it off, and you were talking about the damage that trucks do to our roads. The governor has tried to make trucks the scapegoats for all the damage that we see on our roads and bridges. And you alluded to the pillars that are made of concrete. And sometimes when we're driving down the road, we see that pieces of the concrete are falling off.
Correct.
And I've noticed, when I'm driving over underpasses, I see big chunks of rust on these metal, I guess it's iron.
It's a beams, correct.
Iron beams, and they're just really rusty. Your contention?
That's salt damage from de-icing the bridge with calcium chloride or sodium chloride, which is salt. Sodium chloride disintegrates concrete. Calcium doesn't, but calcium still acts on the steel and disintegrates that. So Rhode Island uses a tremendous amount of salt to de-ice. We don't mix sand anymore. They use straight salt. They used to mix sand and salt together.
Why did they do that?
I don't know why. They don't want to sweep it up, I think, is what the reason, because it costs them money to sweep it up. It doesn't cost them the salt.
They don't want to maintain.
They're
okay.
right. That's what I think their reasoning is. But when you use that much salt, you are just cooking these bridges, and no matter how they build them, the salt damages them. So our group hasn't been in charge of the roads for the last 100 years. DOT has.
Yeah.
They don't maintain these bridges. No one goes out and washes them. This morning on the way up here, everything is coated with white. The cement, the railing, the pavement, everything's white from the last storm of the cement. That is sitting there and eating through. It goes through the pavement, hits the beams, goes through the concrete, eats it away. We have to do something different for
So
de-icing.
that salt leaches down through the bed of the bridge, I guess.
It hits the steel.
And then leaches down, into the steel.
Into the steel.
Sure, those rebars, I guess.
The rebars, it causes expansion. Now, they're using what they call a coated rebar now, but years ago on the older bridges, it didn't. They have a coating that stops the rebar from moisture rusting. When steel rusts, it expands like that, and that's what breaks the concrete and makes it spalls.
Okay.
But the salt gets in and causes the rust, which causes the steel to expand, then the bridge cracks and breaks.
So that accelerates it, but just even the cold, I mean, there's a normal
We have a
contraction and expansion
with steel
over
and
time.
concrete, correct.
And that's not caused by trucks, that's caused by the weather.
Well, you do have a percentage of the heavy weight going over it makes the bridge flex, which causes the concrete to move.
Sure, okay.
But that's designed into that, for that movement to happen, depending on the weight loads. Okay?
Yeah, I know the governor, when she announced this, she pointed to a federal study that said that the damage that trucks cause is 9,600% worse, or 9,600 to 1.
They say 9,600 cars are equal to one truck for damage. They're blaming the truck for it. But in states that don't use our salt like we use it, you get into the warmer states, their bridges are lasting a lot longer, granted because it's the weather, but it's the de-icing chemicals that we use.
Well, but it is then weather and salt and sand. It's not trucks. Because, yeah, go down into Florida, they don't have this problem.
No.
Right? They just don't. I mean, I actually looked into that study. I actually read it so that I would understand the dynamics of it. And it was from the 50s, the 1950s, so back when Eisenhower was president. And you know, Eisenhower was the one who started the interstate system because he knew that we needed, for commerce, for military strength, security, we needed a system of being able to move things easily, quickly, fast. And at the time that the study was done, the purpose of that study was to find out how to build roads and bridges better. Right? Up until that point, state roads were where we did most of our traveling. And you know, they knew that military vehicles going across those roads would not be a good match for state roads.
Right.
So they actually undertook the study to get engineering standards and to know that when they built a bridge, that it would withstand well the weight of anything that went across it. So now our engineers, of course, over time it has been improved and improved and improved. Engineers just didn't stop in 1952. They have continued to study it. And now they build bridges that are perfectly able to carry trucks, cars, whatever, military vehicles, and no damage is done to the roads and the highways and the bridges because of it, because they're engineered for that weight. So to make trucks a scapegoat here, using a study from the 1950, I just think is wrong.
Oh, I agree to it. How do I say it? We're becoming the scapegoats because it's easy to blame us for all this. But when you don't do maintenance to that bridge for the last 35 or 40 years, you don't wash the salt off of it, you don't paint them, they're not, it's just like your car. If you don't wash the salt off your car, what happens to your car in a couple of years?
Yeah.
You get rot through it, don't you? Well, it's the same thing going to happen with that bridge. So no one has taken care of these bridges. For years they have left them go. And now they're falling down, and all of a sudden it's our fault because of it.
Yeah.
And it's not true. We do damage to the roads, yes, but not on the scale that they're calling about.
Yeah, obviously you are heavier. You are heavier.
Yep.
You're bigger, you're heavier. You're going to...
We'll cumbersome, we'll go slow.
Well, but there's also, and as I read it, if your trucks are, you have more axles for a reason. and that's to distribute the
Spread the
weight.
load over, right?
Right? So if your trucks are properly loaded, right, and maintained, that actually distributes the weight. So it's not like you've got however many tons on a pinhead.
Right.
It's really spread over a large, and that's why
area.
you have all those axles.
That's why
and
they
those
require us to
tires.
have those, right?
All right, so if you do that, okay, so you shouldn't be scapegoated here. And I've actually heard a lot of people down in the State House buying into this idea that, well, trucks are big, so they're the bad guys. Trucks aren't the bad guys, right? I mean, you do a lot of good things for Rhode Island.
Well, let's look at it. They say that in our the legislation, that trucks only are generating 20% of the funds. But don't forget, when a truck goes down the road, after all the tolls and taxes on it, there's a sales tax on that load that truck is generating. So that truck is generating a lot of revenue on a daily basis, depending on what he's carrying. So where does that revenue go? That doesn't go to the roads, that goes to the general fund, which goes wherever.
That's right. And your tires are pretty expensive, I understand.
Yep, and there's federal excise tax on tires along with state tax. Those monies come back to us as far as federal funds go. So the truck generates more than 20%, believe me.
Oh, I know they do. I know they do.
But they make it out that we don't.
So, all right, well, listen, we're going to stop there. We're going to move on to another part of this topic right after we take a break. We hope you come back.
The Providence Journal investigations, along with Republican legislators, uncovered that the state of Rhode Island has allegedly wasted $6.9 million. Are you kidding me? $6.9 million? Really, Rhode Island? When I splurge, it's on a fancy latte or a manicure. But that pales in comparison to the unnecessary spending that's going on by our state government, most notably the Rhode Island Department of Transportation. Let's explore, shall we? Now, the DOT had to reimburse the Federal Highway Administration for not meeting quality standards for construction on Route 195. There's $3.1 million in one stroke of the pen. The state settled a breach of contract lawsuit with the Wickford Junction Shopping Center to the sum of $750,000. Hey, at least the Wickford Junction train station is being put to good use. For 3 DOT employees on paid leave for 5.5 months, that cost us $195,000. We'll also tack on here the $383,000 in salaries that the DOT paid to staff transferred to other agencies. The DOT reimbursed the Federal Highway Administration for uncollected overpayments to the Carty Corporation and D'Ambra Construction. There's $381,000. Then there's the case of the Highway Bridge that in 2013 used temporary barriers after a crash revealed that the railings were not properly installed and could have allowed for large vehicles to take flying leaps into the river. The consultants hired to discuss alternatives to the barriers cost $154,000. Then there's another $1.3 million spent in unnecessary overtime and $360,000 in, quote, newly invested positions, unquote. I don't know exactly what that means, but all in all, it means I'm not going to enjoy doing my taxes this year. How are we supposed to combat this wanton waste of wages? Lawmakers have created a hotline and an email address so the public can report any malfeasance. I guess that I wouldn't feel the pain of losing over $6 million to the DOT if we didn't have a sales tax that was higher than the national average, or have the 11th highest gas tax in the nation. Wait. Shouldn't the 33 cents gas tax feed the DOT? Mother! Breathe, April. Breathe. So explain to me how I'm supposed to report wasteful government spending. Now, one suggestion is that the state be more transparent on how it spends its budget. In that mythical scenario, more officials could be held accountable for government waste. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and we have with us today Matthew Olson, who's the president of the Independent Contractors Association, which is a very large trucking organization of local truck drivers here in Rhode Island. And they are very, very concerned about the tolling proposal because it's going to affect them. If it affects them, it's going to affect you. We kind of have dealt with two pieces of this puzzle from a trucker's point of view. The other, as we started talking about in the last segment, is that trucks don't pay their fair share. Right?
Yeah, that's what they say. They claim, yes.
Yeah, you're freeloaders out there, obviously.
Which is just not true, because it starts when you buy the truck. Now, I bought mine new 12 years ago. I usually get a 20-year or 25-year cycle on a truck. So when I bought it new, I ordered it from Mac. I have a Rhode Island sales tax on the truck, and you have an FET tax. So that was 17% when I bought the truck on top of what I paid for it. Now I put,
You pay a 17%
yeah,
kind of
between
sales
Rhode Island
tax?
sales tax and federal tax. Federal is 10, Rhode Island is 7, so that's 17% on the price of the truck when you buy it.
Okay,
Now, any accessory that you put on the truck gets an FET tax and a sales tax when my dump body put on it. So there's another 17% on top of that. So I paid twice.
okay,
Now, I register the truck, it costs me almost $1,000
every year?
every year. It's based on
Not
the weight.
every 2 years?
No, every year.
Because I know a lot of folks out there just went through a 300% increase on their registrations and stuff, and it hurt a family. So yours is 1,000.
Almost 1,000 depending
Every
on the
year.
weight, right, every
Okay.
year. Then after that, you pay, if you drive over 5,000 miles a year, you pay to the government a flat fee up to 15,000 miles. You drive between 5,000 and 15. You pay them based on your weight, a tax to the federal government. Now, I don't drive over 5,000 miles a year, but I still pay, it's a $22.90. So that costs me $550 to pay that.
Okay,
Now, if you're driving more than 5,000 miles, it's so much a mile over the 15,000 plus that. So now you have diesel fuel tax. Anything you buy for the truck, if you buy tires or brakes.
let's talk about the fuel tax before you go on. Diesel fuel tax right now is 33 cents a gallon. And how many miles do you get in a gallon?
Yeah, the truck gets between 5.5 and 6 miles to the gallon hauling. Over-the-road trucks maybe get 8 or 9 today because of the aerodynamic designing, but we're not efficient vehicles with the dump body and everything on them, so we don't get great mileage.
So that translates into a lot of gas,
20 to
diesel.
30 gallons a day depending on where I'm hauling.
Okay, and then times however many days you're on the road, it's a
Right.
lot of gas tax.
A lot of
Okay.
fuel tax, correct.
All right, fuel, okay, you don't call it gas.
No, it's fuel tax.
Okay, all right. So what other things do you pay?
So once you pay the $22.90 and that, now you pay all your federal taxes. When the truck is hauling, you pay also your town tax on the vehicle, which is to the city and town that it's garaged in.
Property taxes.
Property taxes on that. Now any parts that you buy, depending on what parts some are always Rhode Island sales tax is paid on those, but some
And some of
parts.
those parts are expensive,
Yes,
right? I
so
mean, you
very
had
expensive.
mentioned that tires,
Tires are 500 to 1,000 a piece, depending on the size of the GVW.
and you might have 6, 8 of them that you have to change at
I
the
usually
same
buy
time.
4 or 5 a year to put them in rotation because they don't last very long. We do a lot of turning, so it wears your tires off. We're not high mileage. You know?
Okay.
We're local, so. Now, don't forget too, at the end of all this is the truck is also hauling a product. It's delivering something that's taxable. So the truck is generating sales tax through all of this process going on. So those are about basically what you buy. So it costs me on an average.
All right, so you also had mentioned to me off camera that if you replace a transmission, which I imagine happens from time to time,
Or
you
have
don't
it
want it to.
repaired, right.
How much?
It depends on what it is, but most of them, an automatic transmission today can be up to 40,000 to replace. But putting a clutch and doing your regular manual transmission could be 5 or 6, up to 10. It all depends on what's
Okay.
broken.
And the gears, just everything on a truck is,
Computers on a truck
Really
today are
expensive.
very expensive because you can't diagnose it yourself. So you have to have a computer diagnosed if it's a late model truck.
so really expensive.
Very.
If you were to look at a typical big truck, like a dump truck, what do you think it costs you every year to keep it on the road?
I know what it costs me to keep it on the road without putting a driver, including the tires, the registration, everything I mentioned to you. It cost me about $8,000 or $9,000 for that year to put that truck on the road before I even drive it and put a driver in it. That's what my basic cost is. With your insurance, your registration, your taxes, everything that goes into it, and certain, that's not including, that's just tires, that's not any repairs to it. That
And
comes
that's
after.
just taxes, fees, registrations, and if
No
there's
fuel,
repair.
repairs come on top of that. That's
On
just
top
what
of
it costs
that,
me.
the fuel comes on top of that. A driver comes on top of that if you have an
And
employee.
wages, yes, whatever goes with it.
Okay, so
So times that to a fleet and see what they,
quite a bit more than
right,
a private
car.
person car
Right.
pays. Okay, so you pay a lot. And then you said if you haul something inside the truck, you also pay sales tax on that?
well, you're generating an income, so you have to, whatever you deliver a product or selling a product, there's sales tax involved in that, so you have to pay that, charge that customer, and you pay the state for the sales tax, which, by the way, we don't get paid to collect.
No, I know. Nobody gets paid for that. I know. All right, so you actually do contribute a lot to Rhode Island's
A
economy.
lot more than you think.
Right. I mean, the trucking industry, you're one part of the trucking industry. Obviously, there's the Rhode Island Trucking Association, which hauls goods to stores and
Correct.
grocery stores and what have you. They're another kind of trucking concern, but they probably have the same costs that you do.
Oh yeah, they have the same costs. Trucks are universally, this costs money. You know?
Yeah, trucks are universally expensive. All right.
Correct.
And that expense is a lot of government fees, registrations, taxes, everything.
That goes into it. We have to do drug testing for anybody who drives the truck. You have to have physical examination. There's a whole rule of federal regulations that you have to apply to drive the truck from point A to point B. Whether it's Rhode Island, in-state, out-of-state, you still have to follow all that.
And so you have actually not just your family, you're an employee of your company, obviously. Your family depends on the income, but you have other employees.
I have my son that
your
works.
Your members have other employees whose families are dependent on the income.
All this, right.
Then you hire, it sounds to me like you can't really do the mechanical repairs yourself.
No, we do. We do. I'm a very good mechanic.
You do,
We
but you said with the, oh, well, you don't have the latest
If I have to
computer.
take it to the computer, yes, we take it to the dealer for that, but most everything else we can do.
So that's employment for another somebody.
Right.
And the things you haul is employment for
Well,
another
it's
family.
all a circle, and it generates income for everything that you do.
So, do you think this toll proposal will damage the trucking industry?
Yes, I do. Because there's no way that they're going to be able to, a lot of small people are going to have to absorb this. Think about it. I drive down the highway, I drive over the bridge that's toll. I'm delivering something to a customer, or say I'm doing a job. I haven't even been paid for the job yet, and I already owe the state maybe $20 for that toll. So
Yeah.
2 or 3 times over it, depending on what they're going to set for a limit. And I've got to pay that. That's going to come out of my credit card immediately. I haven't even made any money, and I've already paid them money.
Yeah, and you'll either pass it on to your
You're
customer.
going to have to pass it on, or you're going to eat it if you can't bill
And
for it
if you eat
immediately.
it, it'll hurt your ability to have
Compete with others.
employees
Right.
and, yeah. I mean, that's one of the real problems here is this is going to hurt our economy. And we only think about it as, oh, well, those big bad truckers, but it's not. It's us consumers who are going to pay this. The latest version, it's $50 million a year. That's not $20. Oh, $20.
No, it's
Anybody
not.
can swallow that. That's $50 million a year that either the trucks are going to pay or the consumers are going to pay. Not good for us. We're going to take a break on that, and we'll be right back.
Our Senate just loves the idea of renewable energy, but they hate making regular folks pay for its present outlandish cost. So they have it both ways by ignoring the fact that National Grid can't pay for solar generated power unless they charge their customers based on those higher costs. Are you kidding me? They may not realize, but it's true. In 2011, the Senate and the House passed measures which became Rhode Island General Law, Chapter 39, Section 26.2-2. That statute requires National Grid to buy a specified portion of the electric current it delivers to you and me from renewable local sources. Since small solar arrays do not even begin to become competitive in production cost until around 4 times the going rate for the hydroelectric current the grid mostly uses, the law requires the utility to pay that much extra for the preferred raw material. To cover those costs, the law also allows National Grid to lay them off on ratepayers. Now, the Rhode Island Senate has heard the wails and moans of its constituents that the rates are too high, and it has taken action. Senate Bill 2010 was submitted for consideration, sponsored by Senators Raptakis, Satchel, Pearson, Connolly, and Pichardo. It puts a ceiling on rate increases to grid customers based on CPI. So now, if you do the arithmetic, you'll see that the utility has to buy much of its wholesale current at 400% of the market price, but it is allowed to increase the retail bills it sends out at only 3 to 5% above last year's rates. Can any business sell its product for less than it pays to get it? Has the quest for solar, wind, and biomass energy in Rhode Island overlooked the fact that hydro is renewable too? Do the senators who filed this latest bill even remember the requirement they previously placed on National Grid? Do you know what I'm about to say? Are you kidding me?
Welcome back. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and we have with us today Matthew Olson, who's the president of the Independent Contractors Association
Of Rhode
Island, which is a large trucking association. These are the trucks that you see in your neighborhoods all the time, who are doing landscaping, construction work, putting in septic systems,
Correct.
you know, changing out your water mains, those kinds of things. We've talked about some different pieces of the truck tolling issue. And at one point we were talking about, do trucks really do all this damage? And I think it's pretty clear that they don't. They do some of it, there's no doubt you do, but you pay for it. You pay a lot for it. But one of the real culprits here is lack of maintenance.
Correct.
Right? We have not been maintaining our roads and bridges. Under Governor Chafee, the Director Lewis came to us in the legislature. In fact, we called him in to say, hey, what's going on? Our bridges are not in good shape. And it became really clear that the reason that DOT is not maintaining our bridges is debt. DOT has right now $600 million worth of general obligation debt, for which they pay $50 million a year in debt service. And then the Garvey bonds. Do you know what Garvey bonds are?
Yeah, it's the money anticipation of what they borrow that we generate, isn't it, through the federal truck?
Yeah, it's the payday loan
Right.
for the DOT. All right, so every year we get about $240 million a year, I guess, from the federal government. We have a matching amount that we have to give them to get that amount. When we built the I-Way 195, spectacular bridge there, it was really, really expensive. Kind of as expensive as this proposal that the governor has on the table right now. And we said we would borrow all of this federal money, like a payday loan,
Yeah.
right? And we'd pay it back. So as the federal government gives us the money, we pay down the debt. But then we pay interest on top of that, right? Because when you borrow something, you got to pay interest.
Right.
All right, for that money, we're paying $48 million. So here's DOT's balance sheet, operating budget, and they're paying almost $100 million a year in debt service. How do you think you would work that if that was your credit card?
I would be out of business, believe me, quickly. That's why there's no money to fix anything, because they're paying off the debt and it doesn't get to go to what roads and bridges, what its intended purpose was.
That's right. The money's coming in and it's going to a credit card instead of maintaining our bridges and our roads, right?
That's because we have no fund or any dedicated purpose for it. They can put it into the general fund and they take it and use it the way they want to. That's what has been our problem for these years.
Right. Well, honestly, in 2011, the General Assembly, we listened to DOT and we said, okay, we're going to start paying down your debt. So right now, we actually are paying about $50 million a year from DMV fees and gas tax
so it
to
does
pay
go
down
to
this
it. Good.
debt. Some of it, not all of it. There's a whole big pot out there and not all of it goes to the DOT by any means. But even with that a huge amount of money going on there in their budget, they are not going to start seeing that debt go down until about 2021. So we have a ways to go. This proposal now suggests that we put $300 million more on their debt.
A lot of money.
Right? So how are we going to maintain the bridges? Tolls.
Tolls. It's the only thing that can happen with that kind of
Tolls.
debt.
And it's going to be more than $100 million. And we are going to constantly be looking at the tolls to grab more and more money in, because somehow DOT can't use the money they get wisely or well. It's going to hurt.
Oh, it's going to hurt big. And
Yeah.
it's up to us to have to pay that back, which isn't fair, because we haven't been in control or had any say in any of this. over the years of working on these bridges. We have not, no matter what we say, they do exact opposite of what we would like them to do. They haven't been financially responsible is the word I'm going to use.
Okay.
And I think that's a good
I think that's a good word to use.
And I think everyone will agree with me with that.
Okay, so that brings up what can people out there do? Because we have a pattern here of what you just said. They're not listening to us, right? We're giving them the money. They're just not using it very well. And I know your trucking association feels that you've been trying to be good citizens to Rhode Island, and now they're picking on you. Really? I mean, we don't even know if the federal government allows this scheme. You can't treat different classes of trucks differently. That's going to be hashed out, I'm sure, in court at some point. But if we look at the last few years, we've had the 38 studios, right? Insiders came in and said, we want a bunch of money.
That money could have been used to fix our roads and bridges.
There you go.
We have the money if it's allocated correctly, and we don't write checks to people that shouldn't be getting checks. We will have the money to fix these without indebting our citizens for doing it.
Right. I mean,
what's wrong with that?
I think of this Providence Stadium. Our leaders were pushing and pushing to spend a lot of money in Providence. It was 120 from the state government. Providence, which couldn't afford it, was looking to give tax breaks. There was going to be infrastructure changes and parking garages. I think the whole thing came to about $200 million. Thank God the people rose up and said enough. But in this case with tolls, will people say enough as well?
I hope they will, and it seems like they don't want tolls from the polls that have been taken. They don't want tolls because they understand what's going to happen. They know that eventually there's not going to be the revenue, so it's going to come back to all people.
You know what? Even if all of you trucks pay the toll revenue, you just said, you're going to have to pass it on. You can't absorb $50 million worth of cost. So it's going to hurt.
Now, your own general treasurer said the other day, Seth Magaziner was talking about the debt, and they had to change things because they don't have the money. And that was on something else. It wasn't even on the DOT bonds,
That's right.
thought. So they understand it, but whether or not they're going to do it is a whole different thing.
It feels like the people up there aren't listening to the average folks, right? We keep saying, just use what you have well. There's plenty of money. Our budget is $8.7 billion, and what they need for bridges is less than 1%. People want roads and bridges fixed. They want them maintained well. So the question is, what can you do to make them listen to you?
The only thing we can do is hope that they can call their representatives and get active. Maybe somebody can run for office, but we need to get active and call the representatives and demand that this isn't the proposal that we need. That and protests and rallies.
Well, it's about the ballot box, I think.
Also too, yes.
Right? It is calling your representative and senator now and saying, don't vote for these tolls. But somehow they think that by November you're going to forget, or that they're not going to have an opponent. You think you can find some opponents among that trucking association?
I'm sure we could.
And that's what you folks can do, is step up, get involved, find people who will run for office, who will listen to you. Because hurting the trucking industry hurts all of us, right? It hurts families who are dependent upon the income. It hurts us because we're going to have to pay more for everything. And it's not necessary. You have anything you'd like to say?
I would just hope that we can all rally together to solve this issue and to be able to move forward with this and fix our roads and bridges, because they're desperately in need of repair. We don't need to spend that kind of money to do it and put us in debt over it. That's what frightens me about it.
It frightens me too. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
The Providence Business News recently carried a story headlined, quote, Wallet Hub, Rhode Island, worst state to retire. It was posted on Monday, January 25th, 2016, if you want to look the whole thing up. It started me on a research effort to get at the facts. Fact one, there is a company which started out in 2013 which sells itself as a personal finance website. The Providence Business News article quoted Wallet Hub as stating, quote, if retirement is still a big issue, question mark, for you, because of finances, we recommend you consider relocating to a retirement-friendly state, one that will let you keep more money in your pocket without drastically modifying your lifestyle. So based on that statement, they concluded that Rhode Island is the worst state to retire based on adjusted cost of living, entertainment options per capita, and public hospital rankings, and 20 other factors. We came in 51st in the subcategory of affordability, 45th on quality of life, jumping up to 36th in the subcategory of healthcare. Now the top spot in the top 5 went to Florida, followed by Wyoming, South Dakota, South Carolina, and lastly Colorado. Having learned that I should not have retired in Rhode Island, I wondered what else the Wallet Hub folks might have a comment on as relates to living here in Rhode Island. I've chosen just a few of their findings, leaving you the option of digging into their website with your spare time. They do several state rankings covering a whole variety of issues. So here we go. Real estate tax rank, 42nd worst. Vehicle property tax rank, 51st. Income tax rank, 20th. Remembering that lots of states have no income tax. Sales and excise tax 21st. Rhode Island is the 48th worst state for average state and local taxes. A whole 27% negative difference from the national average. Then there is the cigarette excise tax rate where we come in 49th. Then these folks broke out the stats on the best states to live in if you were rich or poor. If you make $25K or less, these folks put you into their lower income rank, meaning you give up 10.28% of your income to taxes. Rhode Island is the worst in the country, never 51st. If you are in the middle rank, 50K, you are 42nd worst at 10.65%. Then the high rollers at 150K at the 45th ranking, giving up 9.85%. Actually, you should move to Alaska, which ranks number 1 in all 3 of these categories. But how do you spend your money in Alaska? Plane fare? My wife works at a doctor's office, so I was curious to see what the Wallet Hub folks had to say about doctoring in Rhode Island. 51st. Ouch. The study methodology was twofold. First, they looked at opportunities for doctors. What was the state market, including earning potential, competitive, and patient population? 49th. Then they looked at work environment, considering the jobs, the risk of the jobs, incorporated state medical board penalties, malpractice payouts, and the cost of malpractice insurance. Now, we did a little better, ranking 30th. But all told, not a great place to practice medicine, comparatively speaking. Education is such a big ticket item, I wanted to see what they thought about teaching prospects. Their job opportunity and competitive ranking, we are 46th worst. Of course, Massachusetts was the best in the country. In the academic and work environment ranking, we were 24th. When they looked at entire state school systems, we ranked 35th. We did make it into the top 5 nationally as the highest public spending school system per capita. So once again, we learned that we are spending lots of money and getting lackluster student achievement results. It strikes me that we haven't got a chance here. I just reviewed the ballot from the 2014 elections. I wanted to see what statewide referenda questions made it or didn't make it. We voted down the Constitutional Convention to make sure nothing ever changes here. All of the bond issues passed handily, mostly on a 64-40 against split. We approved the government's ability to incur about $365 million in debt, $117 million of it in interest payments. Personally, I can't get a 1% interest rate on my savings account. Whoever is buying our bonds is doing great. Now, we really need voter initiative, but that's another program. Thank you for watching, and God bless.